Transcending Dualities, from In the World but Not of It. Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. The key to transcending the egoic mind's dualities is recognizing them as dualities and learning to hold them lightly. As always, the first step is awareness. Be aware of the duality and untruth represented in your thoughts. Thoughts do not tell the truth. When you see this very clearly, your thoughts lose the power to make you suffer. As the children's nursery rhyme so wisely asserts, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me," unless you believe those words. When you stop believing your thoughts, they stop hurting you, and you're less likely to hurt others with them. To be aware of your thoughts, you first have to want to be aware of them. This may sound obvious, but your intention is important. You have to have that intention, and then be curious enough about your thoughts to investigate them. What's going on there? Are they really the source of suffering? How do they do that? The only thing that wants to be aware and can be aware and curious is the divine self. Yes, it is that close to you. It is what is curious. It is what's willing to look and willing to ask questions to discover the truth. It is all that is wise, good, and honorable in you and everyone else. It takes no time to access the divine self, because it's always here. It lives in the timeless dimension of now, the only reality. The divine self is eternally present. If it weren't, you wouldn't be able to experience life, for although you appear to be a human being, you aren't really a human being. Your human or egoic reactions to life are not your real reactions, but your programmed reactions. You're programmed to behave like a human being, but you aren't one really. You just play one on TV. You are the curious, attentive, aware presence that is experiencing life, including your human self. That's about all you can say about who you really are, without getting into lies or distortions. At a certain point in your evolution, this curiosity and willingness to question is activated. Then the false self begins to be deconstructed. Arriving at this point is grace. You can't make it happen before it's time. Fortunately, those who haven't reached this point aren't interested in making this happen, and those who'd like to be hit by grace have already been. So here you are, and it's too late to turn back. The false self is doomed. So let's take a look at some of the dualities that uphold the false self and its mental reality. One of the dualities that is most important to see through and transcend is the concept of better than, less than. Such comparisons play an important role in shoring up the ego. Like all dualities, this one is a lie and lends itself to a lot of stories and consequently a lot of suffering. Better than or less than is always a point of view, a story. It is the point of view of the ego, whose agenda is to make you feel either inadequate or superior. If the ego can get you to believe in better than or less than, it will have succeeded in generating feelings of one kind or another. To the ego, the particular feeling isn't important. Feelings are important, however, because feelings are what make better than and less than seem true. Feelings give substance to the illusions spun by these words. If, for example, you believe your mind when it tells you that you aren't as popular, good-looking, intelligent, or spiritually advanced, all concepts, as so-and-so, you'll feel bad. Feeling bad is proof that you've bought into that lie, but not proof of the lie. Your belief in the concept of less than and in the concepts of popular, good-looking, intelligent, and spiritually advanced creates the experience of being less than somebody else in these ways. So then you have that experience until your mind or someone else's tells you the opposite. Then you have that experience. In this way, people bounce back and forth between feeling bad about themselves and good about themselves. The feelings generated by believing such thoughts put flesh on the false self, making it seem real. Who are you? I'm less than. I feel terrible. I'm better than. I feel good. Who is this I? It was created by thoughts. The false self is nothing but thoughts. If you stop believing your thoughts, you drop into the silence of just being, the divine self. The ego is designed to keep you apart from the divine self, and it does this by telling stories that produce feelings. Once you see this, such thoughts don't have as much sway. They still might affect you a little or for a little while, but not in the same way as before. Once you begin to see the truth about your thoughts, you keep seeing the truth. They can't fool you as they did before. You begin to see through more and more of the mind's lies. Little by little, the illusion is exposed until it has big holes in it, which reveal the blue sky. Dualities are transcended by recognizing the truth. The duality of better than, less than is transcended by recognizing the truth that everything is perfect just as it is. Everything is as it's meant to be and serving its purpose in the whole. You are exactly as you're meant to be in this moment, because you can't be any different than that. Given all the circumstances that created and led up to things being as they are, things can only be as they are, and that's perfect from the standpoint of the soul. Perfect because it can be no other way. This is not perfection as the ego sees it. It is also not predestination, because although things can't be any way other than the way they are right now, they are also unpredictably becoming what they are. Nothing ever needs to change, and yet everything is constantly changing and evolving. The duality of like, don't like is transcended by holding your preferences lightly, by noticing your preferences, but not necessarily letting them drive your actions or decisions. Instead, the divine self determines your actions, which may sometimes take you in directions that go against your conditioned preferences and desires. The duality of want, don't want, is transcended by holding your desires lightly, and by letting everything come that comes, and letting everything go that goes. You lay the small will at the feet of thy will, trusting that the divine self knows best, and that I want and I don't want have little to do with what is naturally unfolding according to divine will. The duality of good-bad is transcended by recognizing where those opinions come from, and that they serve only the ego, and then holding them lightly or letting them go. The duality of emotional highs and lows is transcended by coming into right relationship with life, which is experienced as equanimity. The integrated emotional state is one of being neither overly happy nor depressed, neither bored nor excited, neither hopeful nor despairing. Equanimity is the midpoint between the emotional highs and lows caused by believing your thoughts. This equanimity is sober, steady, okay with everything, at peace, and content. It is a state of causeless, subtle happiness or inner joy. The duality of taking too much, selfishness, or giving too much, not taking care of oneself, is transcended through selflessness. The self that is absent in selflessness is the egoic self, which tends to take or give too much, both for the purpose of getting what it wants. Selflessness, on the other hand, is giving appropriately, which is only possible when the egoic self is absent. In its absence, what's given is exactly what is needed in that moment and nothing more. The integration of this duality is the divine self moving in the world, doing or not doing, according to a greater will that knows exactly what action to take and when. What happens when you become more aware of your thoughts and start questioning them is that space or distance is created between you and the thought stream. Where once you automatically believed, gave voice to, and acted on your thoughts, now you notice them first, if only for a second. That second eventually lengthens as you spend increasingly more time witnessing your thoughts, more time in the spacious presence that is the divine self. In the space that has opened up, there is now room to notice what's going on internally, where before there was no room, no space to notice this. The bigger that space gets, the more room there is for questioning your thoughts. And the more your thoughts are questioned, the bigger that space becomes, and the greater the distance between those thoughts and what's witnessing them. This distance eventually becomes so great that your thoughts seem like they don't belong to you. They're just one more thing arising in the field of consciousness. With space comes choice. You can choose to go back to thinking and believing your thoughts or not. Going back to your thoughts isn't as rewarding as it was before, though. You don't enjoy the egoic pleasure you once got from thought as much as you enjoy the equanimity of not entertaining thoughts. Sometimes you'll go back to your thoughts, and sometimes you won't. But it will become increasingly apparent that you have a choice, and that something is making that choice. What is that? What can choose to go back into thought or stay in the spacious awareness of the divine self? This is where language fails. You could call it the witness or the chooser. But what is witnessing and choosing is not an object or a person like the things and people in the world of form. What you are is not an object that can be observed or quantified or understood. It can only be experienced. What you are notices, experiences, chooses, moves, speaks, and does all the other things you think you're doing as a human being. But these things have never been done by a human being, but rather by the force of life that you are, which operates through the human being. You have always been this force, but you pretended to be human, and most of the time you still pretend to be human. That's fine. Pretending is fine when you know you're pretending. It's only a problem when you don't know you're pretending. When the divine self is more integrated into the human being, you know yourself as divine while pretending to be human. Before that, the opposite was true. You thought you were the human being you were only pretending to be. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.